Hi everyone, this is Brynn with Hope Grows. I'm normally the horticulturalist. I manage the gardens, but today I am going to show you a few short yoga stretch breaks that you can do if you've been sitting a lot or if you just feel tight in certain areas. And so I hope you find this beneficial. I'm also a certified yoga instructor. So when I'm thinking about areas that I know maybe don't get a lot of love, maybe we're wearing shoes a lot if we're outside, I think about my feet. So one of the ways that we can take care of our feet is by massaging them. So if you have a tennis ball, that's a good place to start. So what you're going to do is you're going to sit down in your chair. You want to sit towards the edge of the chair because when I'm flopping in the chair, not that sitting back is always a bad thing, but we spend so much time just collapsing into our spine. So we want to have a little bit of variability in our movement. And that's good for our nervous system and our bodies in general. So maybe I have one tennis ball, maybe I have two, and I'm going to place it on the sole of my foot. I'm just going to rub it back and forth. And you'll notice when you sit towards the edge of the chair, you start to feel some activation in certain muscles. So maybe in your abdominals, maybe in your quadriceps, which are the big muscles on the fronts of your legs at the tops of your thighs. Maybe you start to feel your butt cheeks a little bit. You can move the ball longitudinally and laterally, so you can move it up and down your foot. You can move it from side to side across the ball of the foot. And so what's happening here is you're not necessarily changing your muscle length. You are changing things and patterning certain things in your nervous system to try to get a little bit of release and openness in the foot. And what's nice is if you're doing a little bit of concentrated breath work with your footwork, you can also initiate a relaxation response in your nervous system. So any sort of self-massage is really going to be good for initiating that rest and digest relaxation response in your body. And you want to notice, so maybe if I'm doing 2 feet at a time, which parts of my feet feel tender? So just bringing that one pointed focus into your feet for these few moments. And sometimes I'll do this for like a minute, sometimes it's 3 minutes, and what's nice is I don't have to be so attentive as I'm doing this. Maybe I'm even like watching TV or watching a movie. Sometimes this is a little bit harder on your foot. If you have a golf ball and you've worked on this for a while, your feet might be a little bit more open or receptive. You can even try it with a golf ball, but that's a little bit more intense. So just pay attention to your body's signals. If you have something like neuropathy or neuroma, the golf ball might be too much. So you would stick with your tennis ball. So I'm going to stick that to the side. So that's feet. And one more thing I like to do with my feet is I give myself a little bit of a massage. Maybe I have something out in front of me. If it's hard for me to rotate my leg like this, maybe I massage the tops of the foot too, because we're getting the bottom when we use the balls. But I take my hands and I just move them and I massage the fascia and the muscles on the tops of the feet. So I move that. I'm not pressing down too hard, but just really moving the skin and the muscles and the overlying fascia around on my feet. And then one other thing sometimes I do is I take my fingers and I stick them in between my toes. So if I have my right hand up now, I put it in between my left toes. And you'll notice that sometimes that's a difficult task because a lot of the time modern footwear starts to reshape our feet so that we can't spread our toes as much. And over time, that starts to affect our balance. So keeping our feet spread open, our toes splayed, can be potentially helpful for cultivating better balance. And I can pulse my fingers away from my toes away from my fingers. You can kind of think about this as like the cheap man's like pedicure spreaders. So I would do the other foot too. And you know, sometimes it's hard for us to come and rotate our hip. This is called external rotation when I'm rotating my thigh bone like this. So maybe I'd have a chair out in front of me, or maybe I'd be a little bit lower with my leg. Maybe I move my toes and my feet back and forth. But our feet are important for the health of our physical body because they form the foundation of all the systems of our body. So we start at our feet and we build up from there. So things that are happening in our feet can sometimes impact things higher up on our body just because of the way everything's so interconnected. And so even as you can stand up or you can sit here and just get a sense of maybe the difference that you feel in your feet as you're here. Maybe there's like a sense of calm because you initiated in some sort of response in your nervous system just by giving yourself a little bit of a foot massage. So one of the other areas, so if you're spending a lot of time at a computer, you're rounding the spine a lot. It's not that rounding your spine is inherently bad. It's just that you want to have variability, so change in your movement so that it feels better for your body, and that comes from your nervous system. So variability in movement is a really important principle. So I just want to talk about one thing. This is my anatomical drawing of your shoulder blades. So your shoulder blades are upside down triangles on the backs of your upper back, and there are 4 primary movements from your shoulder blade. So I'm going to show them, and then we're going to combine them in action. So when I lift my shoulders up towards my ears, that's called elevating my shoulder blades. So my shoulder blades move up my spine. So let's try that a few times. Elevate your shoulders and release. 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 So if we think about those 2 upside down triangles, one of the other movements is depression. So we're pressing our shoulders down. And it's not a huge movement, so I'm not pushing down like this, but I can depress my shoulders. So it's like the top of that edge of that triangle is just coming down slightly. And release, depress, and release, depress. And can you continue to lift your spine up even though you're moving your shoulder blades? And release. And you might notice, depress, and release, that one shoulder blade moves differently than the other. So use that as an observation when you practice these things. The next action would be taking my shoulder blades into protraction. So that means that my shoulder blades move away from my spine. So protracting is when they're moving out away from the spine. So protract your shoulders, and it's not that I'm just collapsing here. It's a slight movement. Protract my shoulders and release. Protract or move them away from the spine and release. Protract and release. Protract and release. And then the next movement is retraction. So I'm moving the outside lines of those triangles and I'm moving them back. So it's not that I'm just clipping and moving here. It's a more subtle action. And sometimes I put my hands on my hips as I do that. And so I'm retracting and pulling the outside ledges back and release. Retract, pull the outside ledges back, and you can still see I'm lifting up through my spine as I'm doing that. And release. Retract. And for me, it's harder on the right side. And release. Retract. And release. So what's a simple movement where we can combine all of these together? We can do some shoulder rolls. So when I'm thinking about that, and we'll do these together, and I can have my hands on my hips if I want. I can even have my hands on my shoulders. So I lift, so this is elevation, and then I depress my shoulders, I roll them down my spine, and then I retract them, and then I release. And then they protract. So protraction is when I roll forward, then I elevate my shoulders. Then I start to depress them, retract. And if you're worried about all these fancy terms, just start to roll your shoulders. You naturally bring these movements into your shoulders. Take some breaths with this. And then you're slowly going to move your shoulders around from here. Just changing directions. The job. So I want to show you one more thing that you can do, and that's kind of just providing traction and length for your spine. So I have a chair here. I'm going to place my chair here. And this could be, so I have a table here. Maybe it's the table. And I place my hands on the table, and then I lengthen my spine from here, because this could also be the chair. But you can see I walk my hips back, so I'm not putting the weight in the fronts of my feet. I press my thigh bones and my hips back as my shoulder blades, they move or elevate up my spine. And then I'm not pushing my head up or letting it hang down, so I feel like it's an extension of my spine. And you might feel this in your legs, you might feel this in your spine, but I'm really trying to feel like my rib cage and my shoulder blades could reach and touch my fingertips. So I hope some of these hints were helpful for you, and I will hopefully see you in a future video.